Hi, I'm Danny, and today I'll be sitting down with two recent college graduates to explore the ins and outs of their educations. We'll hear from Devin, a Humanities graduate, and Gerald, who spent his college years studying the sciences. Both of our guests today have entered the workforce since completing their educations, so we'll get the chance to hear about how their educations translated to the workplace. Hey Gerald, thanks for coming in to talk with us. How are you doing?
No problem, I'm doing just fine. You?
Just fine myself. Hey Devin, how are you doing today?
Doing well. I just got off work for the day.
Oh, where do you work at?
Been working as an editor for the local paper since I graduated.
Cool. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got that job?
Well, I graduated last spring with a degree in communications, and I minored in English. During school, I wrote for the Daily, and I loved it, so naturally I moved on to another paper.
So what have you been up to after graduation?
Yeah, right after graduating, I landed a job at a high-profile software company focusing on implementing technology in education.
How'd you get that job?
Well, I've been taking computer science classes since middle school and worked at the company as an intern my sophomore summer. Did so well, they offered me a job before I even got my diploma.
Communications is not very common these days. Can you tell me about your undergraduate experience with that as your main focus of study?
Yeah, definitely. At first, I didn't really have a clue what I wanted to do after graduating, but I took an introductory journalism class, and I fell in love with writing. I knew I wanted to do something creative. I just didn't know what at the time.
So what was your education like?
Pretty standard stuff, stacked with computer science and math classes, pretty much just a STEM course load.
When did you decide on your major?
Like I said, I've been coding since I was 12. It's pretty much the only thing I was ever going to end up doing.
So when did you decide to major in communications?
Probably sometime around the end of sophomore year.
Isn't that pretty late? Didn't you have a hard time completing all of your major requirements?
Right. That's actually another thing I really appreciated about my undergrad experience. Communications didn't have as many major requirements as other majors, so I was able to complete my requirements and even had enough freedom to explore classes outside of my field of study before I even decided what that was.
Like what kind of classes?
So there was a course I took called Introduction to African Literature that I enjoyed a lot. I also really liked a course about gender, race, and class and social stratification that I thought I would dread, but it turned out to be eye-opening. I even got to take a few science and coding classes. Even though I won't be going into those fields, I have a decent understanding of those subjects.
Did you have any difficulty completing your requirements?
Not at all. I just did what I had to and took computer science classes every quarter. Finished my requirements just in time.
Were you able to take any classes outside of your major?
Short answer, no. Didn't have any room for other stuff if I wanted to graduate on time.
Well, with that type of schedule, I hope you entered the workforce knowing everything there is to know.
Actually, in conclusion, I would like to use this grant for the advancement of educational software in the arts. With this technology, students can have early exposure to the mechanics of computer science while exploring artistic expressions within their program. School districts will be eager to buy this software because it replaces the need for a traditional art program in favor of this revolutionary multi-purpose program.
Have you even begun to consider the ethical ramifications of your software? How do you think the public would react to eliminating traditional arts in favor of your software? I would argue that there's no true artistic creation in your program without the artist's physical touch.
I assume people would be open to the idea. We live in an increasingly technological world.
Also, how will you account for the disparity between the wealthy schools and the underfunded schools that can't afford to integrate your software into their curriculum? As engineers, we're responsible for our creations.
This idea may be a brilliant technological advancement, but more important than anything else is the societal effect.
Things didn't go exactly as I had hoped.
Well, I'm sorry things didn't go as planned. If nothing else, it was a learning experience. Now that you shared a little bit about your education, can you tell us about how it's translated to success in the workplace?
Yeah, funny you should ask, because about a week ago during my first assignment, I was in a meeting with one of the writers for a story they had just drafted, and I really got to put something I learned in an English class to practice. So I really like what you did with the paper, but could you guide me through your thinking when you suggested feeding babies to the poor?
So yeah, I was referencing Jonathan Swift's A Modest Proposal as part of my example on how satire has changed over time.
Oh, okay. I understand now. That makes a lot. In my English class, we learned about something called the Liz Lerman process. It sounds fancy, but it's just a way to offer constructive feedback. The main goal is for the author to have complete control of the feedback that he or she is receiving. Can I offer a suggestion about your phrasing in one of the sentences in the middle paragraph?
Yeah, please go
It was
ahead.
something that many of the writers and editors in the office hadn't been exposed to. It allowed for the writers to get honest feedback about their own concerns with the piece. Now, most of the office has adopted the method in their editing processes.
Putting all those years of hard work to good use, I see. Can you take it one step further and apply that knowledge to other aspects of life?
What do you mean?
Pretending I'm a kid learning about the brain and how it works, but I can't seem to get the hang of it. Can you help me understand?
Oh, sure, that's simple. The brain is a biological neural network, which is a series of interconnected neurons whose activation defines a recognizable linear pathway. The interface through which neurons interact with their neighbors is usually consistent of several axon terminals connected via synapses to dendrites on the other neurons. If the sum of the input signals in one neuron surpasses a certain threshold, the neuron sends an action potential at the same axon hillock and transmits its electrical signal along
Alrighty
the...
then, thank you for all your time, Gerald. Hypothetically, if I were a kid struggling to understand how the brain works, how would you explain that concept to me?
Okay. Alright, I think I got it.
Alright, whenever you're ready.
So basically, there are a ton of really smart little cells in your brain, kind of like mini computers, that can talk to each other. And now imagine telling all of your friends to tell all of their friends a secret. The secret would spread very quickly, right? So the mini computers that are in your brain do something similar. When something happens to your body, they send messages to each other, and together they decide the best way to respond.
Great. That's all we have for you. Thank you for your time.
Sure.
Perhaps there's a deeper understanding of practical life skills that the humanities offer. As we have seen from our graduates of different academic areas, the humanities offer a balanced, well-rounded academic experience that allows for personal exploration and growth, whereas the sciences are seemingly restrictive in these areas. Gerald, for example, shared his story about his professional experiences and how his education failed him in the workplace. Devin, on the other hand, was able to successfully demonstrate the skills he learned in school, like communication and an interdisciplinary mindset, to excel in the workplace. We also heard Gerald fail to successfully explain the processes of the brain in spite of his extensive background knowledge in the sciences. And we heard Devin successfully break down the process into an accessible explanation because he had the freedom to take science classes to gain background knowledge and the communicative skills to explain the complex issue. Why then do we see a distinct trend of college students studying subjects relating to science and engineering rather than humanities? There must be a reason. Perhaps it is the common misconception that in the 21st century, the job market is welcoming the STEM majors, but challenges humanities majors. According to many students, there is little evidence suggesting as such.